You know that feeling when you walk into a room and something just doesn't feel right? Yeah, multiply that by 100. That's what the Iron Valley Superior Court felt like that morning. The place was packed, lawyers flipping papers, reporters fighting for camera angles, officers sipping burnt courthouse coffee. Just the usual courtroom chaos. Until the doors at the far end slammed open so hard the walls shook. And that's when everything shifted. 8 officers walked in, looking like they were escorting a nuclear warhead that had legs and fur and fangs. Titan. This massive German shepherd, bigger than any K9 you've ever seen, strapped into a reinforced tactical vest, a steel-plated muzzle, 4 heavy chains clinking like prison doors. And honestly, even that didn't seem like enough. One officer whispered, "Don't let the chains go slack." Another answered, "Dude, I'm not letting anything go slack. You saw what he did last time." People stood up. Chairs scraped back. A woman gasped so loud it echoed. Someone dropped their phone. A reporter muttered, "Nope, I'm out," and bolted for the exit. And then it happened. Titan jerked. Just one sudden, sharp pull, like he heard something behind the wall. That tiny motion sent 2 full-grown officers stumbling forward like toddlers missing a step. One slammed into a bench, cursed under his breath, and the whole room inhaled at once, like, "Oh God, we're all about to die." Even the air seemed to freeze. Titan's claws scraped across the polished floor as he moved forward. No, not dragged. The officers were just trying to keep up. His muscles coiled tight, eyes locked dead ahead, ears twitching, tracking something none of us could see. And honestly, the scariest part wasn't even the growl rumbling in his chest. It was the silence between those growls. That heavy, dangerous silence, like the world was holding its breath. Judge Marietta Cross, steel-gray hair, stare sharp enough to cut concrete, slammed her gavel so hard it cracked the sound block. "Close the main doors. No one enters. No one leaves. Not until this animal is secured." The bailiffs shoved the giant doors closed, the click of the lock echoing like a gunshot. Panic crawled up everyone's spine. Titan stopped moving. His chest expanded, slow, then faster, then slow again. His eyes, those amber, burning eyes, scanned the room with a look that said, "One wrong move, and I end everything." A reporter whispered, "Why does he look like that?" Another replied, "Because he knows this is his last day alive." People crouched behind benches. A juror ducked under the table. A defense attorney muttered, "This is insane. Why is the dog even in the courtroom?" And honestly, same. Why was he here? Titan growled. Not loud, not explosive, just deep. Deep enough that you felt it, in your rib cage. An officer swallowed hard, loud enough for all of us to hear. "Stay calm, Titan. Stay calm, buddy." But Titan wasn't anybody's buddy. Not today. Not here. Not in this life. You could see it. In the twitch of his muscles, the shiver down his spine, the way every tiny sound made his ears flick. This wasn't fear. This wasn't anger. This was survival mode, like he was back in a war zone. None of us could imagine. And honestly, it felt like all of us were too. Time was, Judge Cross tried to speak, voice cracking before she steadied it. Everyone, please remain still. We have control of the situation. But she was lying, and everybody knew it. Control left the room the second Titan walked through the door. Someone whispered behind me, "Why does it feel like we're standing inside a trap?" Another answered, "Because we are." Titan shifted, chains rattling a warning, and everyone flinched again. He didn't attack. He didn't leap. He didn't even bark. But in his eyes, you could see the truth. He could end this room. He knew it. And for one terrifying moment, we all knew it too. That courtroom didn't feel like a courtroom anymore. It felt like a cage holding something too powerful, too broken, too unpredictable to be contained. A cage holding Titan. And somehow, we had to survive the next hour with him. So yeah, let's pick up right where we left off. The room was still frozen in that weird, suffocating silence when Judge Cross finally nodded to the bailiff. "Bring in the footage," she said, her voice low, steady, but shaking underneath. The kind of voice someone uses when they're trying to look strong, but their soul is sprinting for the exit. The lights dimmed. The projector clicked on. And suddenly, the courtroom wasn't in Iron Valley anymore. It was back inside the last time Titan was here. A grainy timestamp appeared in the corner. March 18th, 2027, 9:41 a.m. And just like that, everything went downhill. The video showed Titan standing beside two officers. Tense, yeah, but nothing wild. Just alert. Ears forward, focused. The courtroom on the screen looked almost calm. Then the defendant, smug guy, cheap suit, leaned over and hissed something toward Titan. The audio was too low to hear, but Titan's reaction? Instant. 1 second he was still. The next he was a missile. A streak of fur and fury. The officers holding him might as well have been cardboard. Titan tore through them like scenery in a movie set. A woman screamed as Titan vaulted over a bench. And then, the moment that made everyone watching recoil, Titan landed square on the defendant's chest, slamming him into the witness stand so hard the wood shattered like cheap firewood. The man's scream shot through the speakers. Titan thrashed, snarled, muscles bulging under the tactical vest, eyes burning with something primal. Not anger, not rage. Memory. Officers scrambled, chairs flipped, papers flew. Someone slipped and hit their head on the railing. A bailiff yelled, "Trank him! Trank him! Now!" The screen froze on Titan's face. Mouth wide, teeth bared, eyes glowing. A monster. That's what it looked like. That's what everyone saw. When the lights came back on, no one moved. Not even Titan. He didn't understand the footage was about him, but he understood the fear. He could smell it. The tension, the sweat, the panic tightening around purse straps and briefcases. Judge Cross cleared her throat. "Let the record reflect," she said, "that the defendant survived but suffered significant injuries." A man muttered, "He's lucky he survived at all." Then the prosecutor stood. Assistant District Attorney Calvin Royce, tall, sharp features, a man who looked like he ironed his soul flat every morning, adjusted his glasses and stepped forward. His voice was smooth, polished, too confident. "Your Honor," he said, "what you just witnessed is not an accident. It is a pattern. Titan is unpredictable, uncontrollable, and undeniably dangerous." He let the silence sit heavy. "For the safety of Iron Valley, and for the safety of every officer who risks their life handling this animal, we request an immediate order for humane euthanasia." The words hit the room like a punch to the gut. Someone gasped. Someone whispered, "Oh God." Someone else stood, but got yanked back down. Titan didn't move, didn't growl, didn't react, which somehow made it worse. Royce turned toward the jury box. Not a jury trial, but he loved the attention, and gestured at Titan. "This creature," he said, "is a loaded weapon, not a K-9 officer, not a veteran, not a hero, a weapon. A living, breathing rocket with teeth." He leaned forward. "And rockets don't get second chances." The room murmured anxiously. A journalist whispered, too loudly, "Titan isn't a dog. He's a guided missile with opinions." Detective Aaron Blake, standing in the corner, shook his head, jaw clenched. He muttered, "That's not who he is," but didn't step forward. Not yet. Judge Cross steepled her fingers. "This is not a decision I take lightly," she said. "Titan has served. Titan has saved lives. But the question before us is whether he remains a threat to public safety." Someone whispered, "He does." Another whispered, "He doesn't." A third whispered, "I can't breathe." Honestly, same. No one could breathe. The defense attorney looked like he might faint. Titan lowered his head. Slow, like he sensed something terrible shifting in the air. Like he knew the word euthanasia, even if he didn't understand English. Judge Cross opened her mouth to speak again, but before she could, the bailiff at the door stepped forward. "Your Honor," he said quietly, "there's someone here asking to be let in. A woman and a child." And that was the crack in destiny no one saw coming. And that's exactly when the whole mood in the room shifted again. You know, like in those old Western movies when the saloon doors swing open and everyone stops playing cards? Yeah, like that. But heavier. Because the moment the bailiff said there was a woman and a child outside, Judge Cross lifted her hand, like, "Hold that thought. and signaled the attorneys to sit. But before she could even decide what to do next, someone else beat her to it. From the third row, a man slowly pushed himself to his feet. Not young, not polished, not dressed like he belonged in a courtroom. His jacket was worn, boots scuffed, hair a storm of gray, the kind of gray earned, not aged. He took one shaky step into the aisle, then another. An officer reached for him instinctively, but the man raised both hands, palms open. "No trouble," he muttered. I gotta say something." The entire room froze. Even Titan tilted his head, ears flicking. Judge Cross narrowed her eyes. "State your name for the record." He swallowed hard, voice cracking as he said, "Caleb Turner, U.S. Army, retired." Some people inhaled sharply, recognizing the tone, the trauma, the weight sitting on his shoulders. Caleb didn't wait for permission. He stepped into the center of the courtroom. His hands were shaking. Not a small tremble, but the kind that comes from memories that live under your skin. He pointed at Titan. "That dog," he whispered, "saved our entire unit in Fallujah." The room went dead silent. You could have heard someone blink. He took a breath, voice catching, like remembering hurt more than speaking. "I was there," he said, louder now. "We were on a convoy, 12 of us, 3 Humvees. Titan wasn't just a K-9. He was our early warning system, our lookout, our guardian angel on 4 legs." He gripped a bench to steady himself. "We were rolling through Route Phoenix, and if you know that road, you know it's one of the deadliest damn places in that war. And Titan picked up something none of us saw." The courtroom leaned in, breath held. Caleb's eyes glazed, like he wasn't in Iron Valley anymore. He was back there, on that desert road, sun beating down, dust in the air. He barked, just once, sharp, urgent, the kind of bark that twists your gut before your brain even catches up. He rubbed his face. "Sergeant Mason Holt, Titan's handler. He yelled for us to stop, but the third Humvee didn't hear. They rolled right over the trigger plate." Caleb's voice broke. Boom. People in the gallery flinched. Prosecutor shifted. Even Judge Cross swallowed hard. Caleb continued, voice rough. "The explosion flipped the vehicle like a toy. Mason was thrown. Titan, too. Whole world went white. All I could hear was ringing." His breath hitched. And then Titan got up. Someone whispered, "No way." But Caleb nodded. "I saw it. With my own damn eyes. That dog. The one you're trying to destroy." He ran toward the burning Humvee. Didn't hesitate. Didn't look back. The projector flicked on. No one asked. It just did. A grainy night vision clip filled the screen. Sandstorm winds, fire flashes, screams, static, all of it shaking violently. And in the middle of it, Titan, dragging himself through debris, smoke everywhere. He grabbed onto a torn sleeve, Mason Holt's sleeve, and pulled, hard, desperate, fighting, refusing to let go. Caleb's voice echoed softly over it. He tried. God. He tried so hard to pull Mason out. Titan braced his paws, muscles straining, claws digging into dirt. Mason's body didn't move. Weight too much. Fire too close. The video froze on Titan's face, wide-eyed, frantic, terrified. Then came the sound, the one that made the entire courtroom tense. A howl, long, broken, echoing through the desert night like something mourning the whole world. Titan howled for him, for the man he loved, for the partner he lost. Caleb wiped his eyes with his sleeve. "He's not dangerous," he whispered. "He's grieving." No one spoke. Not the prosecutor, not the defense attorney, not the bailiff. Even Titan lowered his head, like he recognized the sound of his own past. Caleb looked around the courtroom, at every terrified face. "You think he's a killer? He's a soldier, a veteran, a hero who survived something the rest of us are still trying to forget." He motioned to Titan, not with anger, but heartbreak. "You cage an animal like that long enough, of course he'll break. Hell, any of us would." Silence. Thick, heavy, human. Then Caleb asked the one question no one could answer. How do you punish someone for loving too hard and losing everything? He stepped back, shaking. Judge Cross cleared her throat, voice barely stable. "Mr. Turner, please take your seat." But the damage was done. The truth had cracked open the courtroom like lightning, and now there was no going back. Honestly, maybe it was the silence after Caleb's story, or the heaviness in the air, or the way Titan's breathing changed, slow, deep, almost shaking. But something in that room shifted, like the whole place exhaled at the wrong moment. Judge Cross lifted her gavel again, just to settle the room, just to move on, and she barely tapped it. Cop. That tiny sound, that harmless, normal courtroom sound, hit Titan like gunfire, like an IED going off all over again. Everything detonated. Titan exploded upward with a roar. No, not even a roar. It was this deep, chest-cracking, thunder from the belly kind of bellow that made the lights tremble in their fixtures. A woman screamed. Someone dropped a folder. The gallery jerked back like a single, terrified wave. Titan lunged. Not at a person, not toward the front. Just blindly, instinctively. Like something inside him snapped loose. The chains snapped taut. Metal clanged hard enough to spark. 2 officers stumbled back instantly. The third wasn't fast enough. Titan yanked sideways and dragged the man a full 3 feet across the floor. Someone shouted, "Hold him! Hold him!" But holding Titan was like trying to hold a tornado. He slammed into the portable barrier the court had set up. This heavy metal gate borrowed from the sheriff's office, and the entire thing tipped, then crashed over with a sound like a car wreck. The noise sent a wave of panic through the gallery. People bolted. A reporter tripped over her own camera bag. Chairs scraped. Someone shouted, "Move!" And another voice cried, "Don't push me! Stop shoving! Stop!" But nobody stopped. They ran like the floor had turned into fire. And in the chaos, this woman, maybe mid-40s, wearing a red coat, stumbled as she tried to dodge backward. She tripped over the base of a bench and fell face first onto the marble floor. Her scream cut off, sharp. A second later, blood trickled from her nose. Bright red, shockingly red, against the courtroom tile. "Somebody help her!" someone yelled. But nobody moved. People were too scared Titan would switch targets if they got near him. And Titan? He wasn't even looking at her. He wasn't looking at anything in that room. His eyes had gone somewhere else entirely. Somewhere desert dry, sand-filled, smoke-stained. His back arched, muscles quivering, chest heaving like he couldn't pull air in fast enough. PTSD in real time. He wasn't in Iron Valley. He wasn't in a courtroom. He wasn't surrounded by civilians or officers or lawyers. He was back on that road, back under that fire, back hearing that explosion, back losing his partner. And the worst part? He wasn't fighting them. He was fighting the memory. One of the officers, younger, too fresh, too scared, lifted his taser with shaking hands and yelled, "He's gonna kill someone! He's gonna kill someone!" Detective Aaron Blake spun on him, furious. "Put that down! That's an order!" But the kid didn't lower it. He was shaking too hard. And honestly, the room backed him. People yelled things like, "Shoot him! Trank him now! What are you waiting for?" Panic makes cowards out of everyone, even the brave ones. Titan whipped around again, swinging wide enough that 3 officers lost their footing. One flew sideways into a desk, papers scattering like snow. Another slammed into the jury railing. The third dropped to a knee and yelled over the noise, "He's out of control! He's out of control!" Judge Cross stood from her bench and shouted, "Do not fire that weapon! This is my courtroom!" But her voice drowned under another bellow from Titan. It shook the room. It shook the air. It shook people to the core. And God. The look in Titan's eyes. Wild. Lost. Not violent for the sake of violence, but violent because he was drowning in something he couldn't escape. He wasn't choosing this. His past was choosing for him. The officers tried to pull him back again, but Titan thrashed sideways, knocking over another chair. The chains scraped across the floor, screeching like metal on bone. Someone yelled from the gallery, "He's not safe! Put him down before he tears us apart!" Someone else shouted, "That dog is unhinged! What are you people waiting for?" Every voice piled on top of another, fear mixing with anger, mixing with misunderstanding. And in all that noise, one line cut through everything like a blade. A terrified officer, backed against the wall, wide-eyed, cornered, screamed, "He's gonna kill us! He's about to kill someone!" The words seemed to freeze in midair. Titan jolted at the sound, ears twitching like he recognized the tone from war. Time 800 mems. He spun again, almost slipping. His claws scraped sparks on the floor. The officers tightened their grip and still got dragged another few inches. The woman on the floor wiped blood from her face, shaking uncontrollably. People clung to walls, terrified Titan would suddenly choose a direction, any direction, and charge. Judge Cross slammed her gavel again, this time yelling, "Enough! Everyone, hold your position! Hold!" But no one listened. Fear had taken the wheel, and once fear is driving, good luck getting control back. Titan roared again, louder, deeper, shaking the walls, and suddenly, the courtroom door burst open, light spilled in, and everything changed. Right as Titan's roar shook the walls, like the whole damn courtroom might crack down the middle, that door, that heavy 100-pound courthouse door, creaked open like something straight out of a slow-motion scene in a movie. No one touched it. No one called for it. It just opened. Every head snapped toward the entrance. Every officer froze mid-pull. Even Titan paused, just for a microsecond. Ears flicking toward the sound, like some tiny part of him recognized something softer than fear. A sliver of hallway light spilled across the polished floor, and then, these tiny footsteps echoed in. So, imagine the most chaotic, most terrified room you've ever seen. People crying, officers shouting, a massive PTSD-ridden war dog tearing down metal barriers. Just absolute madness. Now imagine something completely out of place cutting right through that chaos. A kid. A little kid. She stepped inside wearing this bright yellow puffer coat. Cheerful, puffy, winter warm. Hugging a floppy white stuffed bunny so tightly its ears bent sideways. Her boots made that little tap, tap, tap on the marble floor as she walked in. And the whole courtroom just lost it. "No, no, no, don't let her in. Get her out. Someone stop her. That's Titan. What is she doing?" Voices collided, shrill, panicked, furious. A bailiff sprinted forward but slipped on scattered papers. A reporter screamed, "Whose kid is that?" One woman reached out like she could grab the child from 20 feet away. The officers holding Titan tightened their grip because he jerked at the noise. But even they knew they couldn't stop whatever was happening now. Judge Cross's face went white. Detective Aaron Blake whispered, "Oh God, please no." But the kid? She didn't react to any of them. Not the screams, not the panic, not the scrape of metal chains on marble. She just kept walking. Slow, calm, careful, like she was entering a library instead of a war zone. And the craziest part? Titan. This massive, uncontrollable, traumatized war dog stopped moving. Just stopped. His tail froze mid-swing. His chest held mid-breath. His eyes locked on her, like his entire nervous system short-circuited. Judge Cross whispered, "Who is that child?" No one answered. No one knew. The little girl walked a few more steps until she stood fully aside the room, her bunny dangling now, bouncing with her movements. You could feel the room holding its breath. A reporter raised a trembling hand like she could shoo the girl away with a gesture. "Sweetie, you can't be here. Don't come in, please." But the girl didn't even look at her. She only looked at Titan. And Titan, God. Titan looked like someone had unplugged the terror inside him. His body lowered, just an inch. His ears tilted, not forward like attack mode, but sideways, confused. His eyes, wild moments ago, softened. The officers exchanged looks like, what the hell is happening right now? And then someone shouted, the words slicing the air. "Sophie! Sophie, stop!" A woman burst into the doorway, pale, frantic, breathless. Rachel Monroe. Time 8 hums. Her eyes filled with horror when she saw her daughter. "Sophie, please, come here," she begged, voice cracking. "Baby, that dog, he's dangerous. Sweetheart, please." But Sophie didn't move. Instead, she tilted her head, studying Titan like kids study butterflies or puddles or clouds. Someone whispered harshly, "Take her out. Why isn't anyone grabbing her?" But those closest were too terrified. No one wanted to run toward Titan while he was locked on Sophie. A deputy gasped, "She's in his strike zone. She's right in it." Another muttered, "Oh, Jesus. Oh, Jesus." Rachel tried stepping forward, but a bailiff grabbed her arm. "You can't," he whispered. "If you run at her, the dog might." He didn't finish. He didn't need to. And then, the little girl, bright yellow coat, stuffed bunny in hand, took one small breath and whispered soft enough only Titan and the first few rows heard. "Hi, Titan." His name. She knew his name. Officers froze. The prosecutor blinked. Judge Cross whispered, "Oh, my God." Rachel covered her mouth, shaking so hard she nearly fell. And Titan. Titan took one single gentle step forward. Chains rattled, but not violently. More like curiosity, like he was being pulled, drawn. The officers didn't even try to stop him. Detective Blake whispered, "No way. No way this is happening." Sophie smiled. Not big, not bold, just a tiny, impossibly soft smile that didn't belong in a battlefield of panic. And for the first time since the morning began, Titan's breathing slowed, his muscles loosened, his eyes softened. Like that little kid, that tiny, fearless little girl in the yellow coat, was the first warm thing he'd seen in years. Her name. And now the courtroom finally heard it as Rachel whispered it again through tears. Sophie Monroe. And she wasn't afraid of Titan, not even a little. And the crazy thing is, for a second there, it felt like Sophie's little voice had actually calmed Titan. Like this tiny 6-year-old with a stuffed bunny somehow pressed pause on a monster. But that calm, yeah, it didn't last. Because right when Titan shifted his weight, not angrily, not even fast, just shifted. Every officer reacted like a grenade had just been lobbed into the room. He stood up, all the way up, and honestly, seeing him at full height, chest broad, fur bristling, that tactical vest gleaming, yeah, it was enough to steal the air out of people's lungs. 8 stun guns snapped up at the exact same time. 8. A chorus of metallic clicks, hands shaking, fingers twitching on triggers. One officer shouted, voice cracking, "Keep her back! Keep her back! He's moving!" Judge Cross slammed her gavel so hard it bounced. "Close that door!" she shouted, pointing, like sealing the room would fix any of this. The bailiff panicked and slammed it shut, so violently it echoed like a shotgun blast. Titan jerked at the sound, head whipping toward the noise. That one movement nearly set the officers off. A reporter ducked under a bench. A man whispered, "It's over. She's gone. Someone grab her." Rachel Monroe looked like her soul was crawling out of her chest. "Sophie," she cried, voice breaking mid-word. "Sweetheart, don't move. Please, baby, don't." But Sophie didn't look at her mom, not even a second. Her eyes stayed locked on Titan, like the rest of the world had blurred into static. Titan let out a low sound, not a growl, not a warning, more like confusion. A whine tangled inside a rumble. His ears twitched, one forward, one sideways. He didn't know whether to fear her, approach her, or brace for an explosion only he could hear. One officer whispered, "Take the shot. Take it now before he gets closer." And that whisper, that intention, Titan felt it. You could see it in his posture, muscles tightening, shoulders rising, breath sharpening. Because dogs don't need words. They feel energy, fear, threat, intent. 8 armed men pointing weapons at a child-sized silhouette? Yeah. Titan absolutely knew something was wrong. Detective Aaron Blake stepped forward, palms up. "Don't fire!" he yelled. "Damn it, he's locked onto the guns now. Lower them, lower them." But the officers didn't lower anything. Fear had taken over. Fear makes people deaf. Judge Cross tried again. "Everybody stand still." But the sentence never finished. Because Titan suddenly took one slow, heavy step towards Sophie. Just one. 8 stun guns clicked. 8 officers inhaled, ready to shoot. Rachel screamed. People dove sideways. Someone shouted, "Move your kid, now!" And then, in the wildest, quietest, most surreal instant, Sophie took a step too, toward Titan. She didn't run, didn't rush, didn't freeze. She just placed one small boot in front of the other, like she was walking toward a sad puppy at a park. Judge Cross slammed her gavel. "Someone grab that child! Officers, move!" But no one moved. Not with Titan's eyes locked on Sophie, the only thing in the room not threatening him. Sophie's bunny slipped from her arm and hit the floor with a soft thump. She didn't pick it up. And then, soft, trembling, but steady enough to slice through every scream, every command, every weapon click, she said, "Hey, it's okay." Her little voice cracked on the okay. Courage fighting through a 6-year-old throat. Titan froze. Not like before. This freeze felt deeper. Like her voice hooked into some hidden part of him under all the trauma. Then she whispered the sentence that knocked the entire room off its axis. "Titan, I know you're hurting." The room exhaled. Collective. Disbelieving. Terrified. 8 officers lowered their stun guns, just an inch. Unintentionally. Unconsciously. Detective Blake whispered, Holy crap. She's reaching him." Rachel shook her head, tears streaming. "Sophie, please, baby, please." But it was too late. Sophie stepped closer, close enough that Titan could feel the warmth of her breath. He lowered his head half an inch. Just half, but in a room full of terror. Half an inch felt like an earthquake. One officer whispered, What is she doing?" Another whispered back, "She's not scared. Why the hell isn't she scared?" Titan took another breath. Deep, shaky, almost painful, like he was fighting something inside himself. The trauma, the memories, the fear. But Sophie didn't look away. "Titan," she whispered, "you're not bad. You're just sad, right?" Titan blinked. Slow, heavy, and for one impossible heartbeat. The monster looked like a child's dog. And honestly, after Sophie whispered those words, those soft, impossible words that somehow cut through Titan's entire storm, nobody knew what was going to happen next. You could feel the room holding its breath again. Not just holding it, suffocating with it. Because Titan didn't move. Not forward. Not backward. Not even side to side. He just stood there. This giant, trembling creature caught somewhere between instinct and memory, staring at a 6-year-old like she was the first thing that made sense to him in years. Sophie wiped her nose with the back of her sleeve. This tiny, innocent gesture that didn't belong anywhere near a war-scarred dog snarling in the middle of a courtroom. And then she did something that made the entire room mentally scream. She stepped closer. Just half a step, but half a step straight into danger. Someone whispered, "Oh my God! Oh my God! No, no, no!" Another voice cracked, "Grab her! Somebody grab her!" But nobody moved. Nobody. Not because they didn't want to, but because they physically couldn't. Fear glued them to the floor. Titan's breathing grew louder. This heavy, shuddering inhale that shook his entire body. His paws tensed, his tail stiffened, his shoulders rose. bracing for a hit only he could see. Detective Blake whispered, "He's remembering something, something bad." But Sophie? She didn't pause. She didn't hesitate. She didn't even blink. She reached out. Her tiny fingers slipped through the gap between the metal bars. The soft sleeve of her yellow coat brushed the railing. Her hand hovered there, open, small, unbelievably gentle. And you know that moment when the whole world stops, like the universe leans in to see what happens next. Yeah, that's exactly what this was. One of the officers hoarsely whispered, "Kid, don't do it. Please, don't." But Sophie just said, "Come here, Titan. It's okay." Titan's ears twitched. Then he let out a low sound, a deep rumbling growl that vibrated through the floor. It wasn't loud, wasn't explosive, but it was the kind of sound that makes adults take a step back without thinking. A reporter ducked behind a bench. Someone covered their ears. Rachel, Sophie's mom, let out a choked sob. "Baby, don't touch him," she begged. "Sophie, please, listen to me." But Sophie didn't pull her hand back. She whispered, "You're not mad. You're scared." The room froze again. Titan let out another growl, deeper this time. Officers flinched. Stun guns lifted halfway. Someone muttered, "This is it. He's gonna snap. She's done. She's..." But then, something shifted. Subtle at first. Barely noticeable. Titan's growl wavered. His breathing hitched. His shoulders dropped half an inch. And then, his eyes softened. Like he recognized something in her. Something familiar. Something safe. He took one slow, trembling step. Chains rattled. Officers tightened grips. People gasped. Judge Cross whispered a prayer. And Sophie? She didn't back up. She didn't blink. She didn't flinch. She held her hand steady. Pitch. "Come here, buddy," she said quietly. "I know you miss him." It was the first time anyone had ever said something Titan actually felt. The big dog lowered his head. Slow, heavy, almost painful, like gravity was pulling him toward her. His nose came closer, closer, closer. You could hear his breath, warm, shaky, brush against her knuckles. Another growl rumbled inside his chest. People panicked. "Don't! Get her out of... He's gonna..." But then Titan did something that made every single soul in that courtroom forget how to breathe. He pressed his muzzle, his scarred, steel-muzzled, battle-worn muzzle, against the palm of her hand. Gently, like a wounded animal begging the only person who understood him not to leave. An officer whispered, voice cracking, "Jesus, he's submitting." Another officer dropped his stun gun in disbelief. A juror pressed a hand over their heart. Even Judge Cross sat back. eyes wide. Sophie smiled through her tears. "There you go," she whispered. "Good boy." And Titan, this creature everyone had labeled a monster, closed his eyes. Just for a moment. Just enough to show trust. Just enough to show surrender. The entire room fell silent. Completely. Utterly. Silent. Titan wasn't attacking. He wasn't resisting. He wasn't even scared anymore. He was home. For the first time in years. In the touch of a child he somehow remembered without knowing why. Sophie stroked the side of his muzzle with her thumb. "It's okay, Titan. I'm right here." And the impossible became real. You know that feeling when you're watching a puzzle finally snap together after staring at the pieces forever? Yeah, that. But multiplied by 1,000. Because while Titan's muzzle rested gently in Sophie's hand, and while the entire courtroom stood frozen like statues afraid to breathe too loud, someone else in the room was moving. Slowly. Quietly. Like he knew something the rest of us didn't. Detective Aaron Blake. He'd been standing near the wall, half hidden behind officers, his face twisted into this stunned, conflicted expression, as if he recognized something in Titan's reaction the rest of us missed. And while the courtroom held its breath, he reached into his bag. Not fast, not dramatic, just steady, careful, intentional. Judge Cross noticed first. "Detective Blake? What are you doing?" He didn't answer. Not right away. Instead, he stepped forward, just a few feet, holding a thin, weathered folder that looked like it had survived an entire lifetime in someone's attic. The edges frayed, the label faded, the metal clasp rusted. It wasn't a courtroom file. It was older, personal. Blake swallowed hard. "Your Honor," he said quietly, I need to show you something." An officer hissed, "Blake, not now. She's right in front of the dog." "I know," Blake whispered back. "Just trust me." His voice wasn't confident, wasn't commanding. It was shaken. Like he had just realized the universe had been teasing him with a truth he should have seen months ago. He approached the bench. The bailiff almost stopped him, but Judge Cross lifted a hand. "Let him," she said. "He knows something." Blake nodded, holding the folder up, almost reverently, like it might crumble if he breathed wrong. "I kept this because I wasn't ready to throw it out," he said. "Didn't think it mattered anymore. But now I'm thinking it matters more than anything in this room." He opened the folder. A single photograph slipped out. And the moment the picture hit the overhead lights, everything changed. Even Titan looked up. Just barely. Like a memory tugged at him from across the room. Blake's voice wavered. "This photo was taken 8 years ago, at Fort Hensley." The courtroom leaned in. A young man in uniform, broad shoulders, sunburned cheeks, a smile bright enough to warm the paper. Sergeant Mason Holt. and beside him, Titan, younger, brighter-eyed. No scars, no trauma carved into him. A dog who looked free. But that wasn't what made the room gasp. It was the third figure, a tiny girl, dark hair and pigtails, pink shoes, cheeks soft and round. A toddler. Blake whispered, voice thin, cracking. That little girl is Sophie Monroe. Rachel Monroe let out a sound, not quite a gasp, not quite a sob, something raw, something breaking open. No, she whispered, louder. No, how is that? Blake turned to her gently. You brought her to the base once, he said. Family day. Mason carried her everywhere. Titan wouldn't let anyone else near her. It was like he'd claimed her as his own. Rachel covered her mouth, hands shaking violently. Oh my God. Titan. He remembers her? Blake nodded softly. Dogs don't forget the ones they love. Time pours. The room didn't just go silent. It went still. Judge Cross finally spoke. Mrs. Monroe, are you saying Titan belonged to your late husband? Rachel nodded, tears spilling freely. Yes, she cried. Mason trained him, lived with him, loved him. Titan wasn't just a partner. He was family. She looked at Titan, really looked at him. Not with fear now, but recognition. And then she broke, completely. He used to sleep at the foot of our bed, she whispered. Mason always said Titan would protect Sophie for the rest of his life. A sob tore out of her, and he remembered. My God, Titan never forgot us. The photo slipped from Blake's hand and floated to the floor, landing face up. Sergeant Mason Holt. Titan. Sophie. A family. Broken by war. Reunited by fate. Every officer lowered their weapon. Every reporter lowered their camera. Every juror leaned forward, pulled by gravity toward the truth. And Titan nudged Sophie's hand again, gently, carefully, like he understood every word, like he was asking to stay. It wasn't a miracle. It wasn't magic. It was memory. A soldier's dog finding the soldier's child. After 8 long years. And honestly, with everything that had just happened, Titan recognizing Sophie, Rachel breaking down, the entire courtroom realizing this wasn't just a dog, but a piece of a family stitched back together. You'd think life would give everyone a second to breathe. Yeah. No. Life apparently said, let's raise the stakes. Judge Cross, voice trembling but trying desperately to hold it together, cleared her throat. We're taking a 10-minute recess. Everyone remain calm and return to your seats. People started to settle. Officers lowered their weapons. Rachel knelt beside Sophie, hugging her but not daring to pull her away from Titan. Even Titan looked peaceful. For the first time all day, he wasn't shaking. He wasn't bracing. He was just there, guarding Sophie like he had 8 years earlier. Detective Blake wiped sweat from his forehead and muttered, "This whole courthouse feels like it's about to fall apart." And that turned out to be the most accidental prophecy ever spoken. Because not even 60 seconds into the recess, the building answered him. A deep, low rumble rolled through the courtroom floor, like a truck slamming into a wall far beneath them. The lights flickered. Dust drifted down from the ceiling. Someone whispered, "Did anyone else feel?" Boom! A thunderous crack tore through the air, so violent, so sudden, half the room ducked on instinct. Rachel screamed. A juror dropped to the floor. The bailiff yelled, "Everybody out, now, move, move!" But nobody had time to move, because right above Sophie's head, a massive chunk of the courthouse ceiling, big as a motorcycle, heavy as hell, broke free. The sound it made wasn't even a sound. It was a death sentence ripping loose. The entire courtroom looked up and gasped as the ceiling started to fall. Plaster, wood, concrete, metal beams, all crashing down. Right toward Sophie. Rachel's scream turned into something inhuman. She lunged forward, but an officer grabbed her, pure instinct. Detective Blake shouted, "Sophie, run! Baby, run! Move! Move!" But Sophie was frozen. Tiny hands to her chest, eyes wide, feet glued to the floor by pure shock. And the second Titan realized what was happening. He didn't bark. He didn't growl. He didn't hesitate. He moved. He ripped those chains apart like they were paper. Metal links snapped, literally snapped, flying across the room like shrapnel. Officers dove away. Rachel screamed his name. Someone yelled, "Get the child! Get her!" But Titan was already airborne, launching his massive body across the courtroom with a deep, primal sound that wasn't anger. It was instinct. He threw himself over Sophie, wrapped his entire body around her, curved his spine like a shield, pressed her head into his chest with his muzzle. And then, crash! The ceiling slammed down. A shockwave ripped through the courtroom. A deafening bum shook the walls. Dust exploded everywhere. Splinters flew like shrapnel. Lights blew out in a chain reaction. The courtroom plunged into chaos. People screamed. Officers shouted. Rachel collapsed to her knees, clawing at the floor. "Sophie! Answer me, baby! Answer me!" Blake coughed through dust, waving the air away. "Titan! Titan! Sophie! Where are they?" As the dust thinned, someone screamed, "There! Under the debris! Oh my God!" They rushed forward and froze. Titan lay across the floor, his body crushed beneath the fallen ceiling beam, his vest torn, fur soaked in blood, His sides heaved weakly, barely rising, barely falling. But Sophie was untouched, protected beneath him. Not a single scratch. Her little hands tangled in Titan's fur as she sobbed into his chest. "Titan! Titan, wake up! Please, please don't go!" Her cries cut through the dust like blades. Rachel screamed again, crawling until she reached them, grabbing Sophie and Titan like she couldn't choose who needed her more. Officers lifted debris piece by heavy piece, hands trembling. Blake pressed his fingers to Titan's neck. No one breathed. Then, his voice cracked. "He's alive. He's alive but fading. We need a medic right now." Sophie buried her face into Titan's neck, sobbing so hard her whole body shook. "Titan, please. Please don't leave me. You promised. You promised." Titan's eyes fluttered open. Just barely. He nudged her hand with the last fragile flicker of strength he had left. And then his head went still. Not limp. Not lifeless. Just still. "Sophie," screamed his name. A sound so raw, so broken, it made the entire courtroom crumble inside. "Titan!" Her voice echoed against the shattered walls like the cry of a child losing the last piece of her family. People always say big moments feel slow, like life moves in frames. But not this. Not tonight. Everything after Titan hit the floor felt like a blur someone grabbed by the edges and shook, hard. Sophie screaming. Rachel sobbing. Paramedics stumbling over broken benches. Dust drifting through the air like snow from hell. The next thing anyone knew, Titan was on a gurney. Slammed into the back of the ambulance, 3 medics working on him at once. And his blood. God. His blood smeared the metal. Thick, dark streaks. Too much. Way too much. Sophie refused to let go of him. They tried, really tried, to pull her off gently. "No, sweetie, you can't. Honey, you have to step back. Let the dog breathe." But Sophie wrapped her arms around Titan's giant neck and screamed into him. "I'm not leaving him. Don't take me away." A medic finally threw his hands up. "Fine, fine, she stays. Just keep her clear of the wound." Rachel climbed in too, shaking like she might collapse. Detective Blake squeezed in at the last second. One hand on the doorframe, the other wiping blood off his cheek that wasn't even his. The doors slammed shut. Sirens roared. The ambulance lunged forward. Inside, chaos. Titan's breathing was ragged. Every inhale, a fight. Every exhale, shorter than the last. One medic shouted, "He's losing too much. Get the plasma." Another pressed gauze into the torn gash along Titan's spine. Blake held Titan's head. Rachel held Sophie. And Sophie. God. Sophie held the only piece of her dad she had left. Time wound threes. She rested her head against Titan's chest, whispering through sobs. "Please, please don't die. You saved me. You saved me again." Titan's eyes flickered, barely, but each flicker was slower than the one before. A long streak of blood dripped from his mouth onto Sophie's sleeve. She didn't even notice. "Titan, please, please stay with me." The monitor beeped wildly. Too fast, too unstable, too damn close. A medic murmured, "Pulse is weak, barely there." Another medic muttered, "If he crashes, we're not getting him back. His heart's taken too much trauma." Sophie jerked up. "No, no, he's strong, he's Titan, he never gives up." But even as she said it, Titan's head drooped. His chest rose, barely, fell, and then didn't rise again. A long, piercing tone replaced the frantic beeping. The medic froze. "Oh God, he's flatlining. Start compressions. Go, go. Where's the epinephrine?" Rachel's hands flew to her mouth. Blake backed into the corner, whispering, "No, no, 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 come on, buddy, don't do this." Sophie stared at the flat line. Her whole body shook. "Titan, Titan, Titan." She grabbed his face in both hands. "You can't leave me. Do you hear me? You can't leave like Daddy did." Silence. Not in the ambulance. There was still yelling, compressions, frantic hands. But inside, Sophie's voice. Something cracked open. A medic tried to pull her back. She ripped away. "Stop! Please! Let me talk to him!" They paused. Only for a second. But it was enough. Sophie pressed her forehead to Titan's muzzle, tears pouring into his fur. "Titan, don't leave me. Don't be like Daddy. Daddy said he'd come home, but he never did. Please don't leave me too." She choked on one word. "Mason." And that name, hit Titan's body like electricity. No one else noticed. But Sophie felt it. She jerked up. "Do it again," she screamed. The medic blinked. "Do what again?" "I said Daddy's name. Say it again. Say it." Rachel whispered, voice shaking. "Mason. Mason Holt." Titan's ear twitched. The medic stared. "No, that's impossible." Blake leaned in. "Again. Everybody, say it again." Rachel sobbed harder. "Mason Holt. Mason Holt." Sophie pressed her face against Titan's again. "Titan, Daddy Mason needs you. Please come back. Please." And then the monitor beeped. Once, twice, again. The flatline vanished. A pulse flickered. Weak, irregular, but alive. The medic gasped. "We've got activity. Oh my God, he's coming back." Another beep, stronger. Titan inhaled. A thin, shaky breath dragged from somewhere deep. Rachel broke. Completely, Sophie threw her arms around Titan's neck, laughing, crying, shaking. The medic whispered, "That kid. She called him back from the dead." Blake wiped his face, voice cracking. He heard Mason, the name he loved most. Titan nudged Sophie's shoulder. Weak, trembling, but real. Sophie whispered, "I'm right here, Titan. I'm right here." The siren screamed outside, but inside the ambulance, a heart had started beating again. After Titan's heart literally stopped, and then kicked back to life the moment Sophie whispered Mason's name. Yeah, Iron Valley wasn't the same. People talked. News stations blew up. Half the town called it a miracle. The other half said fate stepped in. But everyone agreed on one thing. That dog wasn't supposed to survive. And yet, he did. For her. When the courthouse reopened 48 hours later, with emergency repairs slapped onto the ceiling and half the benches still powdered in dust, the crowd outside looked like a championship parade. Reporters, veterans, neighbors, strangers, people holding "Save Titan" signs, kids hugging stuffed dogs with little paper badges taped to their chests. And right in the middle of the commotion, Sophie Monroe, holding Titan's leash while he walked with a slow, determined limp beside her, wrapped in medical bandages, wearing a fresh new vest labeled "Recovering K9, Do Not Disturb, Except Sophie." Inside the courtroom? No fear. Not anymore. People didn't avoid Titan. They didn't press themselves to the walls. Some even reached out to touch him gently as he passed. Rachel kept a hand on his back like he'd vanish if she let go. Detective Blake walked behind them, carrying that same old, weathered folder, the one whose photo changed everything. And Sophie? Sophie walked like she already knew the ending. When Titan settled beside her, resting his enormous head on her lap, the entire room melted into a hush so deep it felt sacred. Then Maj Marietta Cross entered. Not stiff, not harsh, something softer, something heavier. She sat, took a breath, then stood again. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried like thunder. "Before we begin," she said, "I want to make one thing absolutely clear." People leaned in. Titan is not the defendant in this courtroom. Murmurs rippled. Judge Cross lifted a hand. Silence fell. 2 days ago, Titan wasn't just an injured K9. He wasn't just a war dog with trauma. Her voice cracked. He was a shield. Sophie pressed her cheek into Titan's neck. He nudged her back with a soft, tired groan. Judge Cross continued. He protected an innocent child from a building collapse. He survived a battlefield overseas. And when his heart stopped in that ambulance, she glanced at Sophie. A child who loved him called him back. People sniffled. Someone sobbed. Even the prosecutor lowered his head. Judge Cross straightened, fire returning to her voice. Titan Holt is not a threat. He is not a danger. He is not disposable. She lifted a sheet of paper. The motion to euthanize Titan is hereby. She tore it clean in half. Void. The courtroom erupted. Gasps, cries, applause, a wave of raw human relief. But Judge Cross wasn't done. She looked at Titan, at the scarred, weary soldier who'd given everything and kept nothing for himself. "Titan," she said softly, "front and center, please." Sophie tugged the leash. Titan limped forward, slow, proud, until he stood at the heart of the courtroom. Judge Cross lifted a small blue box, military style, heavy with meaning. Sergeant Mason Holt gave his life protecting this nation. And Titan, you honored his courage. You carried his love. And when it mattered most, you protected his daughter as fiercely as he would have. Her voice wavered. She opened the box. A silver badge sparkled. Titan Holt, by the authority of Iron Valley Court and the Iron Valley Police Department, you are hereby recognized as K9 Veteran Guardian. For bravery beyond active duty, for loyalty beyond life, for heart beyond pain. She knelt. The judge knelt and pinned the badge to Titan's vest. Titan leaned forward and pressed his forehead against her shoulder. Gentle, grateful, whole. The courtroom broke. People stood, cheered, cried while cheering. Detective Blake wiped tears with the back of his wrist. Rachel hugged Sophie tight enough to squeak. And Sophie, smiling through tears, wrapped her arms around Titan's neck and whispered, "You did it, buddy. You really did it." Titan wagged his tail, slow, heavy, alive, full of something he hadn't felt in years. Home. Judge Cross wiped her eyes, straightened, and declared, "Ladies and gentlemen, this courtroom stands for Titan." Applause thundered. Titan looked around, confused, but happy. He finally understood. He wasn't feared. He was honored. He was loved. He was seen. After the courtroom exploded into cheers, after Titan received the badge Mason never lived long enough to pin on him, after Sophie wrapped both arms around his neck like she was anchoring herself to the one thing the universe finally gave back. You'd think that was the ending, but it wasn't. Because life, real life, doesn't end with applause. It ends with what happens after the applause fades. That afternoon, paperwork flew faster than snowflakes outside Iron Valley Courthouse. Officers signed forms. Veterans shook hands. The chief wiped tears he kept calling allergies. Then Judge Cross stepped down, placed a hand gently on Rachel Monroe's shoulder, and said the words that made Rachel crumble into her arms. Your husband's final request was clear. Titan belongs with you, with your family. Rachel covered her mouth, tears slipping between her fingers. He's all I have left of Mason, she whispered. All Sophie has. Judge Cross nodded softly. Then take him home. 3 simple words. Take him home. The thing Titan had been searching for since the night his world blew apart in Iraq. By the time they reached the Monroe house, the sun had dipped behind the snowy ridge. Iron Valley glowed under a sky full of soft white flakes, drifting sparks catching in Titan's fur as he stepped out of the truck. He looked around slowly, like he wasn't sure if this was real or another nightmare waiting to vanish. Sophie hopped down after him, boots crunching in the snow. She wrapped a thick red scarf around Titan's neck. Twice. "Heroes deserve extra warm," she giggled. Titan blinked. At her. At the house. Back at her. Something in his posture shifted. Like, oh. He recognized this. Not the place, the feeling. Rachel flipped the porch light switch. Warm yellow flooded the steps. "Come on, Titan," she called softly. "Welcome home." Titan stepped forward, slow, careful, like someone who forgot what it felt like to have a home. Inside, Sophie grabbed a blanket, a soft lavender one that still faintly smelled like Mason's old fabric softener. She dragged it onto the porch. Because she insisted, snow nights were extra cozy outside. She plopped down and patted her lap. "Come here, buddy." Titan didn't hesitate. He lay beside her, big body sinking heavily, tired but peaceful. Then, with a low groan like a door opening after years of rust, he placed his massive head across her tiny legs. Rachel watched from the doorway, hand over her heart, leaning on the frame like she needed support just to handle the moment. Snowflakes drifted down, melting on Titan's fur. Sophie stroked him softly. "You're home, Titan. You're really home." Titan exhaled, a long, shaking breath releasing years of battles, cages, sirens, fire, loss. And then, something unbelievable happened. For the first time in almost a decade, he fell asleep. Not the trembling, twitching, half-aware sleep of trauma. Not the startled jerks. Not the panic, no. This time he slept like a creature who finally felt safe. His muscles loosened. His breathing steadied. His ears drooped. His tail lay still. Sophie leaned her head against his cheek, whispered, "I love you, Titan. Daddy loved you too." Titan didn't wake, didn't flinch, just breathed. Slow, deep, peaceful. Rachel wrapped a blanket around both of them, Titan and Sophie, then sat beside them, tears falling softly. Not breaking tears, healing tears. Snow thickened above them, soft and quiet, like the whole town was tucking them in. And on that porch, under that winter sky, a soldier's dog found the home he thought the war had stolen forever. A little girl found the guardian she thought she'd never feel again. And a mother found the last missing piece of the man she lost. Titan shifted once, barely, and let out a soft whine. Rachel smiled. "He's dreaming," she whispered. Sophie kissed his ear. No, he's resting. Daddy said soldiers only dream when they're scared. Titan's not scared anymore. Rachel's breath hitched. She looked at Titan, then at the falling snow, then back at Titan. Yeah, you're right. Sophie pressed her face into Titan's fur, whispered, "This is your home now. You're staying forever." Titan, even in sleep, nudged her knee with his nose. Like he understood. Like he answered, "I know." Snow kept falling. Night grew deeper. But on that porch, wrapped in blankets, wrapped in love, wrapped in memories, 3 souls healed together. And Titan, for the first time since Mason's last breath, slept like a dog who had finally made it all the way home.